How much time is left in the game right now? A few minutes?
It's like 2 minutes left.
What's up?
So there's like 2 minutes left.
What's the score of the game? Is who's up right now? Oh, 2 minutes still? Okay.
34-32.
Are the Browns winning or Broncos?
Broncos just hit a field goal
Broncos
to pick
are
this
up?
up. Yeah, they just took a lead right now. So.
Bro, in my the league I'm in last place, I won 3 weeks in a row now. And now the guy I'm playing this week that I just beat, he's in like 10th, I think.
Yeah.
He's in 10th. So he's gonna drop. And then the guy who's in 11th, he lost also. So I'm finally gonna move up, I think, to like at least like 10th place this week.
Shit.
I thought I was cooked, bro. Like a month ago, I was like, "There's no way I'm gonna come back and get out of the bottom spot." But at least you got to keep fighting until the end, you know.
Well, that's the same mentality these Niners got to have, right?
I don't know, my connection a little bad right now. What's up?
So that's the same mentality that the Niners got to have.
My connection a little shaky.
A little bit.
Yeah, seriously, bro. Seriously. Yeah, I don't know why my Wi-Fi's been like kind of bad like the last 4 or 5 days. I don't know why. Like you're frozen on my screen right now.
Oh, yeah, you're looking a little shaky right now.
All right, we got some people tuned in. Hopefully the connection. All right, let me reload a little bit. Hold on. All right, is that good now?
A little bit
Still
better.
Kind of freezing. Might need to hop on the hotspot real quick, honestly.
Yeah, hit the hotspot real quick.
Let me just do that before we get started here. All right, we good?
Yeah, that's better.
Finally. All right, let's go ahead and get started because, as always, with this 49ers team, unfortunately, we got a lot to talk about. Some comments already. Shout out to Manpreet, to Preet, Avtar Singh. We got a lot of people in the comments tuning in. So thank you guys for joining us here on the deep dive. You know, we wish it was under better circumstances, but it's been terrible. Wait, Manpreet said there was a pick six in the game. Was that Cleveland got the pick six or Denver?
I think Denver. They just scored off Winston. That was the second pick six of the game, bro.
I'm playing against Denver defense. I do not need that. Please, please, please don't tell me I'm down. Okay. Well, like I said, we got a lot to talk about, man. The San Francisco 49ers fell to the Buffalo Bills on Sunday Night Football, 35-10. And, you know, saying they fell is an understatement because it's a game that they just got outplayed from start to finish. And, you know, we'll get into the game and what went wrong and everything. But we got to start with the biggest news of the day. Christian McCaffrey is going back on the IR. He suffered a PCL injury. We saw him go down in that game yesterday on a non-contact play. Everyone held their breath collectively in that moment. Here's a quick video of that play, and you can see right away McCaffrey just slides as soon as he feels the injury.
Long time about how hard and how long, how diligent he is.
You saw his knee just kind of buckle there, and you know the first thing immediately everyone thought was Achilles, right? Which is, I mean, he's been dealing with Achilles tendonitis all season, which is why he missed most of the year, right? But thankfully it wasn't that. It was a PCL injury. He's going on the IR. He's pretty much done for the season, assuming the Niners aren't going to make the playoffs, right, at this point. And then to make matters worse, our RB2, Jordan Mason, I guess he suffered a high ankle sprain in the game yesterday, which I don't remember hearing on the broadcast or seeing any tweets during the game from Schefter or Rappaport, anybody, but news came out today. He's going on the IR as well. So both your top two running backs out for the season pretty much. Isaac Grendo, our rookie running back, is now our RB1, which is Not terrible. I mean, he's been really good this year, 5.9 yards per carry on the season. He scored his, I think it was his second or third touchdown of the season last night against the Bills. And so, I guess the bright spot is this, that we get to see our rookie running back in a starting role now, and we'll see what we got with a guy like Garendo. We already know a little bit, but now the role is his, right? You're going to see him get 20 touches a game probably and get high usage. So it'll be good to see that. The positive we can take away from the Christian McCaffrey injury is that not only is it not an Achilles, it's not an ACL, nothing that's going to take him a year to recover, but considering how the Niners season is going, it's not the worst thing that he's going to be on ice for the rest of the season because he already wasn't healthy. We saw he wasn't looking explosive, the last few games. And now as the Niners season is slowly, or I should say quickly coming to an end with all these losses that they're starting to pile up, at least McCaffrey is not at risk at his injury getting any worse or his injury lagging or going into the next season, right, missing more time. So I guess that's the one positive we can take away, right, from the McCaffrey injury.
100%. And, it was still kind of iffy, coming into the season. Obviously, he had the bilateral, Achilles tendonitis. And, I was on record saying that he might not even play this season, but, he gutted it out, obviously. They got him back, for that game against the Buccaneers. And you could tell he wasn't looking like his explosive self these last 3 games, but last night, like, you started to see that explosion again. Like, he was finally kind of rounding back into form. That tackle that took his knee out, I mean, that could have easily gone for a touchdown. That was going to be a 70-yard burst to the end zone. So it's a bit unfortunate for sure that, we're going to be losing Christian McCaffrey for the season amongst so many other injuries that the team has endured and continues to endure this entire season. But like you were saying, Sandeep, I don't think it's the end of the world that he's out for the season. This season wasn't going to go anywhere after we lost to Seattle. It felt like it kind of ended that day when they lost that divisional matchup.
Yep.
And that was the 3rd divisional game that they had blown this season. These are teams that they were supposed to take care of, and they don't have their closers for most of these games because of injury. That game against Seattle, we didn't have Nick Bosa on the defensive end for the whole 4th quarter. And, you saw what Seattle did. They diced them up for 2 touchdowns in that 4th quarter. So it's going to be interesting to see like how the team pivots. I am excited to see Garendo obviously play. I feel like he has a lot of upside. He kind of reminds me of Raheem Mostert a lot with his, when he gets around.
Yeah.
I wouldn't rush back any of the other guys either at this point because, you need to see what you have, going into 2025. But it sucks, man. I mean, look, we had a lot of lofty expectations coming into the season. We had the whole roster back together again, and that doesn't really happen for teams that either win or lose a Super Bowl. You usually see a lot of roster turnover on either side of the spectrum. So it's just been an unfortunate series of events. I mean, we can't even blame Kyle Shanahan at this point. He's trying to dial up the plays. He's trying to do whatever he can to get his guys the ball, but they're not able to stay on the field. And McCaffrey was our biggest weapon all of last season. And to lose him now at this juncture of the season, being 2 games below 500 and having to literally run the table to even have a chance to make the playoffs, not to make the playoffs, but just to have a chance.
Yeah.
It's going to be really, really difficult. So you might start seeing a little bit more of the young guys, moving forward these next couple of weeks here, especially how, we'll see how these next 2 games shake out because they technically are not mathematically eliminated. They got the Bears game and the Rams game, but
which is crazy when you just think about how shit of a season it's been for them.
Yeah, and it's because the division is so weak, right? The NFC West has notoriously been a weak division. Like the Niners have ran that division for years. These past 5 years, they've won the division 4 times out of the past 5 years. So, I don't anticipate, the way that the season has gone, I don't anticipate the Niners to make the playoffs, but this is a very prideful team at the end of the day. They're still going to have some fight in them. Their leaders are a little bit dejected. The team is dejected. The coach is dejected, but I don't expect them to just roll over and die. Like, this is not a situation where they're just going to go out and tank if they know that they're mathematically still in it.
Yeah, they're going to compete, no doubt. I mean, at the end of the day, these guys are all professional athletes, right? You're never coming out there expecting to lose or having that mindset of tank. You go out there, you make plays, right? So they'll be in these games, but the more you take these losses, the harder it gets, it's mentally draining, it's physically draining, emotionally. Your mindset. You have to come in with a different mindset every single week, and the more you lose, your mindset tends to change, right? Like, and in this game against the Bills, right? Even though the scoreboard final box score shows you it was 35-10. I mean, they had a chance to really be in that game, right? Here, yeah, Tharsing saying Niners won't quit, but I don't think they have it this year. Yeah, 100% agree. They don't have it this year, and it sucks because we've been talking about this the whole season. But even despite McCaffrey being out and the other guys missing time, it's like, if they win those games against the Rams, Cardinals, and Seahawks, their record is different right now, and it's a much different conversation that we're having. But that's why those losses come back to bite you in the ass, right? Because if you have 3 more wins in the win column right now, what are they, 8-4 right now? And then your perspective is different. You lose to the Bills, you're not feeling that bad. You lose to the Packers, you're not feeling as bad because at least you're at the top of the division. And you're going to probably at that point clinch a playoff spot, right? So it sucks that it came to this. Let's talk about the game last night. Go ahead.
Yeah, one other quick thing that I wanted to mention, injuries or not, I mean, those were 3 games that they should have been able to close out. But, before we talk about the game, I just want everyone to know, what type of injuries that this team has dealt with, which I've never seen from a Niners team. Fred Warner with his ankle, Trent Williams with his ankle, Nick Bosa his oblique, Diamador Lenore his knee, Jordan Mason his ankle, Aaron Banks a concussion, Jordan Elliott his knee, Talanoa Funga his wrist, Dre Greenlaw his Achilles. And guys that are already out for the season, Brandon Ayuk, Hargrave, Elijah Mitchell, Drake Jackson, Ambry Thomas, Kevin Givens, these guys all had a part in us making the Super Bowl last year, and they're not playing games right now, right? So outside of Fred Warner, everyone else has missed games for the most part, and it doesn't help when your star players are out. This team has peaked physically, I feel like. A lot of these guys that were in their prime last year, they're probably starting to take that downturn, into the second half of their career. And it's a real shame because they had a 5-year window that they didn't capitalize on with this core, and we're probably going to see a lot of roster turnover in the offseason.
Yeah, it's crazy when you look at that injury list because I forgot some of these guys got injured earlier in the season, and that just tells you how many injuries the Niners have dealt with, right? Like Javon Hargrave, forgot he tore his bicep earlier in the season. Elijah Mitchell, I forgot he was our RB2 before. We've been leaning on Jordan Mason and Isaac Guerrero all season up until McCaffrey came back, and I forgot Mitchell was a guy that we had. Ambry Thomas, I forgot he suffered a season-ending injury, right? So that's how bad it's been this season. So many guys. And Fred Warner, you mentioned, the only guy who hasn't missed time. He's been playing with a fractured bone in his ankle. That's insane, and that just shows you the type of fight that he has. And, they asked him about the injuries after the game, and what he had to say was that there's no excuses. So here's Fred Warner on that.
I don't think it's that difficult at all. I mean, at the end of the day, like, we're as desperate as they come to try to just get a win. Like, so I'm down for whatever. Like, I just want to win. I could care less about anything else. So whatever they need me to do, whatever we need the team to do, like, let's just do that and let's get one win. I mean, obviously that's going to always make it harder, but at the end of the day, like, we have 11 guys going out there who are NFL players. Like, let's play together and let's find a way to make it work.
You can hear the dejection in his voice, man. Like, it actually is kind of like heartbreaking to like hear Fred Warner like talk like that because he's always so positive, right? But I think even he knows, like, in his heart of hearts, that this team just doesn't got it this year.
Yeah, it's tough, right? I mean, I agree with what he said. There's no excuse for like the injuries because at the end of the day, all these guys on the roster are in the NFL, right? They're all professional athletes. They're on this team for a reason. And I mean, we've won 5 games this year, right? With a lot of guys out, and not just in NFL, but in all the sports, right? It's they say next man up mentality. And this is when one guy goes down, another guy comes up, and that's when these guys get an opportunity to make a name for themselves, find their place in the league, right? And even despite McCaffrey missing the games, Trent Williams missing games, Nick Bosa missing games, Purdy missing games, they've had chances to win more games. They just haven't been able to do it this year. And it's not an excuse thing, right? With injuries, they're just lack of execution, a lack of ability to make plays, whether it's drop passes, not being able to get stops on third downs. We know about the special teams hiccups that have been happening all season long, right? So there's a lot of things that take course over the course of games, over the course of the season, that factor into why you lose. yes, of course, having your best players out there is always going to give you a better chance, but there's no excuses, right? Like Fred Warner said, when you have 11 guys out there, they're healthy, they have the ability to make plays, and they just haven't been doing it this season. And it's been tough to watch, you know. And in this game specifically, you know, we talk about what went wrong. I mean, the key thing right off the bat, the Niners had 3 turnovers, the Bills had none. That's kind of the big difference right there, right? The Niners couldn't take care of the ball, and the 3 fumbles that they had were all very timely and very costly. Kyle Juszczyk fumbling right on the goal line, right at the 1 or 2 yard line, right when they're about to score. That's crucial, right? And the big talk of the town on that was, why not use Jordan Mason in that situation? He was running the ball effectively up until that point, and Kyle Shanahan, for whatever reason, is like, no, let's give the ball to our fullback, you know, from the 2-3 yard line, and fumbles the ball. Brock Purdy fumbled the ball once when the ball just slipped out of his hand. And I think that you can just attribute it to like the weather, right, and the conditions. And the Bills capitalized on that one. They scored 4 plays later with a touchdown. And then Debo, kickoff return, he fumbles the ball right after the Bills had scored that touchdown. They got the ball back and fumbled it, right? So those things, Jake Moody missing 2 more field goals, you know, and
What else
in
is
the
new?
first half, what else is new? Yeah. Death taxes and Jake Moody missing field goals, right? So, I mean, you think about this, those 2 field goals, if they make those, it's 21-9 at halftime. If they score on that fumble with Juszczyk, you're talking about a 21-16 game.
21 to
And
16, yeah.
and they're right there in it, right? So even with all the guys they were missing yesterday, Trent Williams, Nick Bosa, Lenore was out right again yesterday. So all these guys being out, they're still in that game. And so again, it just comes back to you know, self-inflicting wounds. 10 missed tackles in the first quarter. I heard that on 95.7 today, I think. So not being able to make plays, right? This is not like these are things they can't control. The Bills went out there and put up 35 points in the blizzard. Why couldn't the Niners do it? Right? It's execution. That's what it comes down to. And so that's kind of what the game came down to. We gave up 220 rushing yards to the Bills. We saw James Cook break out for a lot of big runs. Josh Allen had some moments here and there. They converted on 6 of 12 third down, so Niners couldn't get off the field. They couldn't make stops when they needed to. We only had 86 pass yards. You know, a lot of people were on getting on Brock Purdy for not looking for open guys. And George Kittle talked about that after the game when they asked him about the lack of targets he got.
You got a pass on the first play.
I did.
And you didn't catch another pass the remainder.
I did not.
Well, any explanation on why you did not?
No. I do not have an explanation. I think I ran like 6 more routes the rest of the day. Could be a combination of that, but no idea.
No, there were too many
Oh goodness gracious, no. No, I didn't feel that. I felt pretty open multiple times. It is what it is.
Bro, when someone says something like that gets your fucking coach fired. In any other circumstance, your coach would be fired on the spot if your players were to start saying that. And it's, you know, it's really, really dejecting to hear that, because we know how good George Kittle is. We know that he's open most of the time. I know Brock tries to look for him as much as he possibly can, but I feel like sometimes Brock Purdy also falls in love with Juwan Jennings a little too much. You know, he throws into like triple coverage sometimes just to get the ball to Juwan, because that's who he feels the most comfortable with, you know, in between the 20s. And when it gets down to the red zone, the only guy that he's trusted this season is George Kittle. You know, so it's really hard to see, you know, when your star players not like trying his best not to like bash the game plan. And that's exactly what he kind of just did, is, you know, he's saying that he's open. So
yeah, we never hear Kittle talk like that, right? He's never
Yeah.
one to be like, well, I was open, right? And I just didn't get it. And I don't know if it's Brock Purdy just wasn't seeing him yesterday because of the weather and he felt like he had to make quick decisions, or was Shanahan just not drawing up plays to get the ball into Kittle's hands, you know? So I don't know what it was. I don't blame Kittle for being frustrated, because like he just said, he was open multiple times. So we know the chemistry is there between Purdy and Kittle. It's been there all season. Kittle's having one of the best statistical seasons of his career, I think, this year, right?
Yeah.
We saw how many times he's gone to the end zone this year, you know, for the Niners. So I think it's just a matter of maybe Purdy just wasn't seeing him yesterday, or maybe it's a combination of that, and maybe Kyle Shanahan's just not calling his number, and then it falls on both of them, right?
100%. And, you know, the thing is, right, I think looking at yesterday's game too, and like kind of replaying it this morning, seeing that top view that you see like on Twitter and stuff, there was a lot of plays that Brock Purdy left out there that could have been big plays potentially.
Mhm.
And one of those was just like how George was saying. He ran only 6 routes. On those 6 routes, he was open all 6 times.
Mhm.
So that's that's the reason why George Kittle is probably upset in that at that juncture, is because he knows that he has the ability, and especially in a game like that, in a snow game, right, where that the defense has no legs, to actually guard the person in front of them on both sides.
Mhm.
Both teams are playing on the same field. It's not like we have some disadvantage over them because of the weather. Just because that they're used to it doesn't mean that they also have to go through the same elements that we do. So, George was open, most of the day on the routes that he did run. I feel like Kyle Shanahan gets a little too block heavy with him sometimes and doesn't use him as a receiver. You look at
Yeah.
Travis Kelce, yeah, he's a really good blocker, but he's a better pass catcher, and that's what George Kittle is too.
Yeah, and I think it's that, and it's also the Niners have become predictable, especially when McCaffrey's out there.
Yep.
A lot of times, Kyle Shanahan he loves going to McCaffrey and overworks him, and a lot of people are saying attributing the injury to that is Kyle Shanahan running him to the ground as soon as he came back over the past month, just racking up 15, 20 touches a game, coming off the Achilles tendonitis, and so maybe on some of these plays where it's like Kittle's running out whether it's into the flat, into the corner, the play is designed to first look is supposed to be McCaffrey, right? And by that point, maybe Kittle's not open, or Purdy's already gotten rid of the ball to somebody else. Yeah, Jawan Jennings is obviously become one of his go-to guys too, and that's totally fine. But maybe just it's Shanahan just not drawing up more plays to make Kittle the first read on some of these. Roshan saying that Shanahan plays too safe. That's definitely a big part of it. This is the first time Kittle said something controversial for sure. That's 100%. Niners playing too soft. Yeah, it's true. I mean, all those things are true. And to Avtar's question, what should the Niners do with Purdy? Are they going to pay him top dollar? He's going to get paid. It's just, what's that number going to be? We've talked about this. I don't think it's going to be that $60 million number. And while Purdy has played well at times this season, he's also played poorly at times, a few times this season. So, of course, no one wants to see him struggle, but the Niners can point to things like that and be like, hey, we're going to come here with maybe it's a $45 to $50 million a year annually, right? And I think the Niners are going to have the leverage in this situation, because I don't know if there's another team out there that'll give Brock Purdy a bigger contract than what the Niners are going to offer him. And I think Purdy will take whatever he can get, considering how much he's making right now. He was the last pick in the draft, and coming up from what he did, even if he gets a contract that's, let's say, 5 years, $250 million with like 130, 140 guaranteed, whatever that number is, that's a huge win for Brock Purdy. And it'd be a win for the Niners too, because it'd give them some salary cap space, right, to go out and sign other players. So he won't get top dollar, but he will get comparable to what guys like a Trevor Lawrence got, right, which was about 50. Tua got I think 51 or 52. So he'll be right in that ballpark probably.
Yeah.
But it's going to be interesting to see, right? I mean, we have 5 games left on the schedule. At what point do the Niners consider, maybe benching some of their star players or shutting down some veterans? Do we see guys go on the IR after another loss or two? Because I wouldn't be surprised if the Niners lose out the rest of the way. Honestly, wouldn't. I mean, we got the Bears at home. We're playing Miami. We still have the Lions at home. And then we play the Cardinals and the Rams. So those are the 5 games we have remaining. Those are 5 games the Niners could very well lose. I mean, the Bears are a tough defense. They have a lot of weapons on offense. Caleb Williams has been playing well. They just fired their head coach, Matt Eberflus, right? So I think they're going to be coming out more energized for the new interim head coach he was promoted first to offensive coordinator and now to head coach. So, I think it's going to be interesting to see how the Bears come out this upcoming weekend. And then Niners have a short turnaround. Thursday night game after that, I think, is the Rams. Yeah. So it's, if they lose against the Bears, now you have 4 days to prep for the Rams, who are healthy, right? With Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua all in the mix. It's not going to be easy. Division game. There's a good chance the Niners could go out and lose the rest of these games. Avtar said, Sneeb, I disagree that any team pays Purdy that much money. he's getting. Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I don't think anyone's going to pay Purdy top dollar. The most money he's going to get is from the 49ers. And I don't think that's going to be a $60 million a year contract. I think that number is going to be closer. He'll get more than Mayfield because the market is what it is, right? For quarterbacks now, all these guys are getting $45 to $50 million plus, and Purdy's going to demand that type of money for sure. But it's not going to be top dollar. He's not going to get paid like a top 5 quarterback for sure not. And I don't think he deserves to. As much as I've praised Brock Purdy this season, I don't think he's a $60 million a year quarterback.
No. And you're right in your assessment. I think everyone in the Niners organization is also assessing this right now as well. A guy like Brock Purdy, you would think the way he played last season, had all his weapons. This year, coming into the season, didn't have all his weapons right off the bat. It was a natural regression that was going to happen. And, we didn't want to believe it at first, right? We thought this guy can make every throw. He can make every play. He fits the scheme. He is the scheme. But everything has just gone wrong for him this season as well. He's only, I could probably only count maybe 2 games where he played really well in which they won. Every other game that they won, he played average at best, and they skated by. I think his best game of the season was that Seattle game in Seattle. That was probably his best game. After that was the Rams game, and they lost that game. Every other game that they've had this season where he's played, he's been average at best, and that has a lot to do with his offensive line being pretty trash. It has a lot to do with missing Christian McCaffrey for huge chunks, missing Brandon Ayuk for huge chunks, missing Kittle, missing Debo. He never really had his full offense this entire season. So it is a little bit unfair for sure. But if you're going to pay a guy between $45 to $60 million to be your quarterback, he has to elevate those players around him and be better. And I wouldn't say he's gotten worse compared to last season. His stats have regressed for sure because he doesn't have his weapons. But he hasn't gotten better from last season. And that's what we wanted to see, was that next level jump that he could take, like leading a team down the field and, scoring when you need a score. And those games were against Seattle, the Cardinals, and the Rams. And he wasn't able to do it any of those times. He was able to get his team into position, a few times, obviously, during the course of the season. But when we needed him the most to make those game-winning plays, it just didn't happen this season. And it sucks, obviously, but the NFL is a cruel sport. No one's gonna feel sorry for you because you're missing all your players. Like, that's just the nature of the game. Ask every other team that's lost, star or superstar players this year, how they feel about that kind of situation. So it's hard, but it is what it is at this point.
And when it comes to the quarterback position, right, the most important position in all of football, when you look at the guys who are the greats of this league, talking about guys like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, those guys do the most with the least. And that's what separates the elites from a guy like a Brock Purdy, right? Yeah, you might not have Christian McCaffrey back there. Debo might miss a game. Ayuk's been out. But if you can go out and still make plays and make the guys around you better, that's when you elevate yourself on that quarterback list and become a top 10, top 5 quarterback, right? Look, I'm not going to compare him to Patrick Mahomes because obviously Mahomes is a generational talent, right? But last year, the Chiefs led the league in drop passes, but it didn't matter because Mahomes went out there. He made the throws he needed to throw. He made the plays with his legs when he needed to and delivered in the clutch, right? And that's why Mahomes is who he is. Josh Allen this season, they don't have a great receiving core, right? They got Amari Cooper maybe like week 7, week 8, but before that, his top receivers were Khalil Shakur and rookie Keon Coleman, who were having average seasons up until they got Amari Cooper, which opened up the field for those guys, right? But Josh Allen, again, makes plays when he needs to, whether it's delivering with his legs, making the timely throws to guys, right? Joe Burrow, T. Higgins has missed, I think, 5-6 games this season. Yes, he has Jamar Chase, who's been incredible this year, right? But even without his number 2 receiver out, when Higgins was out, it was their tight end. Tight end steps up, right? Or at times it was Andre Yoshivas, a second-year receiver who starts scoring some touchdowns. So even when you guys are missing, you still have to go out there and make the plays as the quarterback. And unfortunately, Brock Purdy isn't always able to do that. And look, this year we've seen him scramble more than ever, make plays with his legs. And as you were saying, as Dan said in the comments, as my dad said in the comments, our O-line has not been good this year, right? Outside of Trent and Dominic Pooney, those have been our top two guys. The rest of the line has been average to bad. That's why Purdy's been scrambling so much, having to make plays with his legs. Our wide receivers at times seems like they haven't been able to get open. And sometimes they're getting open and Purdy's just not seeing them too. And that's a big part of the problem, right? So we know this going into this offseason, the number one area of concern that they need to address is the O-line. I would be surprised if our first two picks aren't going to bolster that offensive line. Because if you're going to be investing in Purdy $250 million or whatever that number is over 5 years, you better stock up that O-line and make sure he's protected, right? Because it's a lot of money going into your star quarterback. He's going to be the highest paid player on the team. So the O-line is definitely going to be the area of need that they have to strengthen, but he's had his moments this year where he's played well. A couple of games, obviously, where he played bad, multiple turnovers in those games. But game like last night, they just couldn't move the ball. The turnovers, as we mentioned, were costly. And it's just tough, man. This season's been really tough for the 49ers all around. And I think if they lose to the Bears on Sunday, and then probably the key game will be that Rams game. If they end up dropping that game to the Rams, maybe that's when they're like, all right, we need to start looking at playing some more of our young guys and pulling some of the veterans. And I wouldn't be surprised if Brock Purdy is one of those guys that they consider shutting down for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be that Rams game that'll be the key indicator.
Yeah, for sure. I think, depending on, who's available, obviously the Sunday to play, I think they can get the Bears. If they can, obviously their season stays alive and they'll be a little bit more aggressive in that Rams game. That's also considering it's going to be on a short week. You don't know who's going to get hurt this Sunday. I mean, it seems like
Hopefully
every single week, it feels like one star player goes down for a couple of games and then that just derails the whole thing. So, yeah, I mean, if they do win this Sunday, which I think they can against the Bears, on paper we're supposed to be a good team, but they've vastly underperformed as well because they themselves don't have an offensive line to protect Caleb Williams. So that might be one situation where, the Niners probably win a close game if they can. And like you said,
if Bosa's out there, then they'll have a better chance and they'll need Trent also.
Yeah, for sure. And we don't even know if those guys are even going to play. I mean, it doesn't look like those guys are going to practice anytime soon from what Shanahan was saying this morning. But, let's say hypothetically you get this game. That Rams game, like you said, is going to be the ultimate decider on how the rest of the season goes. If they win, they're still going to keep fighting. If they lose, start putting all these guys on IR. I would put, Nick Bosa on IR, Trent, Fred Warner, Brock Purdy, all these players, and just see what you got with the backups and the rookies. We had a really good draft class. I feel like this season, a lot of the guys just didn't get utilized the proper way. A case in point, Ricky Pearsall hasn't seen a catch in the last 3 games, which is pretty insane.
Yeah, that's another thing we haven't talked about yet, right? Where has he been? And that's not a knock on Ricky. It comes back to whether it's the team, right? The scheme. Yeah, is Shanahan just not drawing up plays to get him open, not using him? Is Purdy just not seeing him? Like, what is it? He had that one really good game where he scored his first touchdown of the season, had a few catches, right? And since then, it's been just zeros all in the box score. Like, how come they're not using him? This is a guy they used their first round draft pick on and hasn't seen any touches, I think, in the last 2 games now, maybe 3 games. Like, what's going on there?
I think it's Kyle Shanahan. He's just emotionally spent. I feel like he's just run out of ideas for this season, and it is kind of disheartening to see that because he said he's a so-called genius by so many different pundits and gurus in the NFL, but this season we haven't seen it. This has been a subpar team all season on offense. Outside of that first game against the Jets, this team has been pretty trash on offense pretty much the entire year. There hasn't been any creativeness. There hasn't been the explosive plays like they usually have, even when they have dialed it up. And I think one thing that the Niners are going to really have to look at hard, and Kyle Shanahan's going to have to put his ego to a side, they might have to bring in another offensive assistant or an offensive coordinator to actually run this offense. They can still do it his way. I'm not saying that they can't do it his way. He can drop the plays, but someone has to be the ultimate decision maker on what plays to call at a certain time. Because I feel like he starts thinking about a million different scenarios and panics and calls some weird plays sometimes. Whereas, when you have an offensive coordinator, that's his sole job, right? That's what he's going to be doing is whatever the coach wants me to do, I will do. But if there is a situation where I feel like we can do a little bit better, or, calling this play is better or calling that play is better, I think you need that second mind in there. We had guys like that have left in years past, right? Obviously, Mike McDaniel was a big help, in the offensive role that he was in.
Yeah.
And Bobby Slowick as well, who's now, I believe, with the Texans or with the Saints. Those two guys actually had really integral parts that Shanahan credits, quite a bit. Like they would help him design this offense, and he's lost pretty much a lot of those architects that helped him, design this offense over the last 3 or 4 years. So I wouldn't be surprised if, John Lynch and Jed York, get Shanahan into a room and are like, hey, like, we want to be able to help you. We want to put good people around you. I do expect a lot of not just roster turnover, but coaching personnel changes as well this offseason, because all across the board, the coaches have underperformed, this entire year, whether you look at on the offensive side or the defensive side of the ball and special teams.
And special teams too. Yeah.
All three phases have struggled. So you can't just blame Kyle Shanahan because, yeah, he has a say in all of this, but he doesn't control everything on a day-to-day basis in those categories. The most that he does is obviously the offense, right? But the defense and the special teams is, totally up to like those coordinators and those specialists and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be interesting to see like what they do, but I do expect a lot of turnover, for the coaching personnel.
Yeah, they're definitely going to have to go out and get a defensive coordinator. I mean, everyone's been talking about Robert Salah. I mean, it would be great to get him back. We'll see if he's up for another head coaching position somewhere else. He might be, might not. And if not, I mean, I'm sure all of Niner Nation would welcome him back with open arms, and he can definitely turn this team around on the defensive side, get back to that, that brand of 49ers defense that we're used to seeing, the physical play, winning in the trenches, right? Getting more pressure, running up some blitz. We've barely seen any blitz this year. I mean, they were talking about that about yesterday's game, right? We're only rushing 4 the whole time, and Nick Bosa's not on that D line. It's like you need to send some different coverages, send some different some packages, right, to get Josh Allen thrown off. At least like try it out, and it's been bad, And I don't see Sorensen getting fired, but he might get demoted, and get back to his old role, which I think makes more sense for him. As Roshan said in the comments, special teams was terrible this season. We definitely need a big turnover there. And, we need an offensive coordinator too, for sure. We've been talking about that for a few weeks now. They definitely need somebody to come in and, take over the play calling and just take some of the stress and workload off of Shanahan. And, Shanahan is not getting fired. John Lynch not getting fired. Adam Schefter reported that today. There hasn't been any talk about that at all. As you were just saying, right? This has been a tough season, and injuries have piled up. Mentally, this team hasn't been there. Yes, Shanahan hasn't been great, but you can't blame injuries on him. You can't blame execution on him, right? No. If Purdy misses a throw, that's not on Shanahan. If a guy fumbles the ball, that's not on Shanahan, right? So as a coach, you have a lot of say, but at the end of the day, there's only so many things that you can control. So there's going to be a lot of turnover this offseason, not only from the coaching staff, but the players, as you mentioned. Kyle Juszczyk is probably going to be gone this offseason. Debo is probably going to be gone. Aaron Banks is going to be gone. We're going to see a lot of guys. Hufanga, he might be gone. Dre Greenlaw's going to be interesting to see what happens. McCaffrey just signed an extension, so he's not going anywhere. But there's going to be definitely a lot of turnover this offseason. And Hargrave, I don't know if they can get off his contract. He signed a 4-year deal. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to get off him and what the salary cap hit would be if they did. So, all I know is they do have a lot of decisions to make in the offseason, and this roster is going to look much different next season than it did in the past years. And it sucks, man. I was talking about this, I think, with a friend maybe yesterday or a couple days ago, but it sucks that like they haven't been able to win it with this core, and it's going to be heartbreaking to see guys like Debo gone, like Juszczyk, like Hufanga, guys that have been here for the past 3, 4, 5 years and have been part of this team's rise, right, to NFC super powerhouse, right? The NFC has ran through the Niners for the past few years, and it sucks that we just weren't able to get it done last season. That was the one that they really missed. Now, I'm not gonna say that their window's closed, because I truly don't think it is. They still have key players coming back, right? You have a quarterback that you do believe in. You have a good running back. You have some weapons on offense, and you have some of your core guys there on defense still, including a young secondary. Malik Mustafa was a great draft pick. Renardo Green was a great draft pick. Jair Brown, great draft pick last year. Diamondor Lenore obviously just signed his extension. So we have some players set there. It's just a few other areas that they really need to clean up, and it's going to be a key offseason, whether it's through the draft and free agency for them.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think like how we were mentioning earlier, on the pod, I think the two most important aspects of the team that they need to fix is the offensive line and the defensive line. Because, in the National Football League, you win in the trenches, and, our trench play on both sides has been terrible this year. We can't run the ball when we want to run the ball. We can't get sacks when we want to get sacks. We can't get pressure on the quarterback when we want to get pressure on the quarterback consistently. In a 17 game season, you have to be able to do all those things to be successful. And this team was doing that the last 2 years when they had all their horses, right? When they had guys still, fresh enough and in their prime enough to actually pull off those kind of things. We were very blessed the last couple of years to be relatively healthy for the most part, with all of the key players. And, all the deep playoff runs that they've been through the last 3 seasons obviously has taken a toll on them. They're playing 20-game seasons pretty much every single season for the last 3 years, right? The average NFL team plays 16 to 17 games. So it's a really, really big challenge that, they just couldn't overcome with this core. And it is really disheartening, because we did have all the pieces last season on every phase of the ball, every aspect of the ball. Everything was clicking last year. They were the most vaunted defense, for so many years, even with all the defensive coordinator changes. Even last year with Steve Wilkes, we still had a very vaunted defense, going into that Super Bowl. And, they controlled the Super Bowl for 3.5 quarters with that defense, right? They kept Patrick Mahomes at bay, but, obviously they haven't been able to finish. And, where do you go from here, right? You have to make roster changes. You have to make coaching changes. So I really wanted to see, obviously guys like Debo and Hufanga and Charvarius Ward, like Javon Hargrave, like these guys, like I really feel like they deserve to win one because of how hard they played every single day for the 49ers, but it doesn't feel like it's going to happen now.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, that stat is crazy. 69-57, Kyle Shanahan's head coaching record. His playoff record is better. Unfortunately, we just don't have anything to show for it yet. And that's the problem, and it's crazy, man. It's as bad as the O-line has been this year. Everyone's talking in the comments about the O-line. The Niners ranked 7th in the NFL in rushing yards per game at 140 yards. And that's with McCaffrey having missed the first 8 weeks of the season. So as bad as the O-line was, as much as we saw Purdy scrambling for his life this season, our rushing game was still effective, even with backup running backs in the mix, right? So, and, in the comments, someone here said, let's see, the Niners don't usually draft O-line early. It was Kenny who said that. But their strategy is going to have to change this year, right? That's the number one area where they have to, draft. And the second is the D-line, because outside of Nick Bosa, the D-line just hasn't been effective. Yes, Leonard Floyd the last 2-3 weeks has finally been coming along, but it's kind of too little too late at this point. Like where was that the first 9-10 weeks of the season? And they're really going to have to stock up on the trenches on both sides. And it's going to be interesting to see what they do with the different contracts, who gets let go, and how they can open up some salary cap space, even with the big payday that's coming for Purdy. So at least they hopefully they know. Obviously, if we know, they got to know what their what the biggest areas of needs are. Now it's just a matter of, can they go out and do it? Because even though they've hit on some draft picks and some free agency signings, they've also missed on a bunch of them too, as we know, especially in the early rounds. Yep. Those early round draft picks are going to be very, very important for this team. Yes, you found gems in the 4th, 5th, 6th round over the years. Obviously, Purdy, being the guy that he was, being Mr. Irrelevant, but we know about the whiffs that this team has had in the 1st round. When you think about, obviously, Trey Lance, the D lineman who we had from South Carolina, I'm blanking on his name right now, that's no longer on the team.
Javon Kinlaw.
Javon Kinlaw, right? Guys like that. They just released Ronnie Bell last week, which was 6-7 weeks too late. So we've had some of the worst first round picks for sure. Eddie said that in the comments. That's no doubt. Jake Moody should not be on the roster next season. He's missed way too many kicks this year and in his first 2 years. We need a new kicker for sure. Third round draft pick Jake Moody was, which is still insane when you think about it. And for the lack of production he's had, right, is ridiculous. So season's not over. They got 5 games left. It does feel like it is, but if they come out and lose this game against the Bears, it only gets harder and harder. And then I think at some point we'll see some of these guys get shut down for the rest of the season, which would be the smart thing to do, because at this point you have to start thinking about the long term and you have to be realistic with yourself, because even if they win these next 2 games, or let's say they lose the next one, lose to the Rams, you have to think, all right, we're not going to win the division at this point with 1 more loss. And even if they were to make it to the playoffs, they're just, with the amount of injuries they have, they're not making a run. You don't want Purdy getting hurt. You don't want Trent Williams getting hurt. I think Trent's going to play 1 more season. I mean, he signed that extension. I don't think he wants to go out like this on an injury-riddled year. And, also, we got to talk about quickly Trent Williams. I mean, sending love and prayers to his family. Him and his wife lost 2 twins. It's just super sad, man. The amount of adversity this team has had to go through between him and Travarius Ward losing his daughter a couple months ago too, man. It's terrible, So, sending love to those guys for sure, man. But I don't think Trent's going to go out after this season.
No.
I do think the Niners will. I do think the Niners need to draft a backup tight end also.
Yeah.
Have some insurance there behind Kittle and start thinking about the future of that position. So it's tough, man. From all around, like we said, it's been really, really bad. Thank you, Eddie, in the comments, who said he really likes our show and subscribe. Thank you guys for supporting. Dan, appreciate you tuning in, man. Everyone who's been in the comments today, thank you guys. We go on live every single week, usually on a Monday or Tuesday night after the Niner games. Sometimes we'll even talk a little dubs, but unfortunately this season a lot of the talk has been more negative than positive, just because that's been the nature of the season, but
I know. It's the first year we're doing this, and we've had more bad things to say than good things. I really wish we would have done this last year, when the team was rolling, and
would have been hyped every week.
Hope, right? Yeah, it's been really tough for sure. And like you were mentioning about Trent Williams and Charvarius Ward obviously having a similar issue this season with losing his daughter, Ricky Pearsall getting shot. Obviously, the contract situations with all the key horses that they had in the offseason. And obviously, the biggest thing this year, in this calendar year, is that Super Bowl loss. They just were not able to recover this year from that. And they weren't confident going into the season. You could see it, from the coaches, from the players. They were still shook. Even that game before Kansas City during the rematch, you could tell that these guys, it was in their head still that we lost to this team. And it showed when they, I feel like their season really teetered when they lost that Kansas City game. And I remember telling you this too. I was like, if it really feels like it's over now, because this was a statement game that they had to make. And ever since that game, they've only won 2 games.
I definitely thought that game was going to make or break their season, but considering how that game went, and it was a game that they just never were really in, after the outcome, I didn't think it was as bad as I thought it was going to be going into it. But it was the losses that kind of followed. I feel like that more so impacted it. And also the ones that preceded that game, right? When we talk about the Cardinals loss, the Rams loss, obviously the Seahawks loss. So
they were also in those games. They were up in those games.
Yeah. So even though the Seahawks lost, or the game they lost to the Chiefs, mentally they needed, it wasn't like they were leading that game and then lost it. That would have been a heartbreaker, right? Especially because it was to the Chiefs, but it was a game they just got outplayed from start to finish. But those the 3 losses they had in the division were definitely the ones that, were the toughest. And you and I were both at that game against the Seahawks a couple weeks ago, and we were both saying that. I was like, this was the game that ended their season. I felt like because they lost it in the way that they did. Another lead with 2 minutes left that they blew, and it was at home. You lose it with 12 seconds left. No team this season has lost more games when they were winning with over 2 minutes left than the 49ers. So that just kind of tells you that's been the theme for the season, right? Is just blowing leads, not being able to close out games, and unfortunately, those games have been in the division. So it sucks, man. It just like you said, it's been a terrible calendar year. When you think about how the year started in February with the loss in the Super Bowl, the offseason drama with Brandon Ayuk, Trent Williams, not getting those done, injuries in the preseason, McCaffrey being out for the beginning of the season, and it just it's gotten worse and worse every single week, and there's no team in the NFL that's waiting more for 2025 than the 49ers, because this is a team that we've always had high expectations for. Although this coming into the season, my expectations, I don't know about, everyone in the comments, let me know. I said when the season started week 1, I have low expectations for this team this year, just because I knew the Super Bowl hangover was going to be a thing mentally. And it's unfortunately that proved to be true,
Yeah, and we kind of had the same sentiment like the entire summer. Like, the team had loaded up again, on the back end. So we were like, okay, you feel a little bit more optimistic. But when these contract situations started happening, obviously, McCaffrey at the last minute, he's not playing to start the season. Brandon Ayuk, he couldn't catch a cold the first couple of weeks, couldn't get open, couldn't get any separation. Obviously, all the injuries that piled up at the beginning of the season, and the blown leads, it's just a microcosm of the expectations that a lot of people might have had coming into the season, which were low. So it sucks, right? Like, you would think that a team like the 49ers that's been so dominant for so long would figure out ways to win these games, and Kyle Shanahan has figured out ways to win these games. I feel like he really turned a corner last season when he had 2 come from behind victories in the fourth quarter against the Packers and against
in the playoffs.
Lions, in the playoffs. And we hadn't seen that before. And I was like, okay, now he's finally growing up as a coach, right? And then
that's when he grew a pair. Like when he was going for it on those 4th downs, in those key moments, I was like, all right, this guy's finally growing a pair. He did it in the Super Bowl too. There was like a 4th and 2 at the 32-yard line, and they went for it. And I was like, that's the Kyle Shanahan we need,
Yeah, and that's when Kyle is at his best, is when he's confident in himself, right? And in his scheme. And you saw that interview last night. That was the most dejected I'd ever seen Kyle Shanahan when he's been with the 49ers, even more so dejected after they lose the Super Bowl. So it's, I think, expectations, no expectations, whatever it is, this team is mentally and spiritually broken right now. They need a reset. They need new fresh faces to come in, new fresh blood to come in and perform. And I think they will. I think they will bounce back next season. We're most likely going to end up having a last place schedule anyways, the way that things are going. Luckily for us too, we're playing the 2 weakest divisions in the AFC South and the NFC South next season, which is a really, really big key as well. So I'm really hopeful, depending on how the rest of the season plays out. Obviously, we know that they still have a chance, but let's be realistic with ourselves too. The way that the season has gone, with the inability of this team to win more than 2 games in a row, do you really think they can rattle off 5 straight?
Absolutely not. I mean, I would put all of my money on them losing 5 straight over winning 5 straight. At this point, who knows? I mean, maybe even this Bears game, that's going to be a tough game. Like I said, I know there's a rookie quarterback on the other side, but Caleb Williams is playing well this season, even though they have a bad O-line. He has 20 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions this season. They have a good receiving core. DeAndre Swift has been playing good over the last month or so. So it's not going to be an easy game by any means. They have a decent secondary with Jalen Johnson leading the way for them over there. So, it's hard for me to confidently be able to say that the Niners are going to come out and, handle business on Sunday, because they just haven't proven that they can do so. Especially now that, again, these injuries are piling up. So we'll see. But let me ask you this question for you, and also for everyone who's watching, to make a little bit more of a positive spin at least. What's something you are looking forward to the rest of the season?
I mentioned at the beginning of the pod, I want to see these young guys play. I want to see Ricky Pearsall catch more passes. I want to see what, the backup defensive backs that we have that are probably going to be starters now for the rest of the season, what they got. Renardo Green, Malik Mustafa, obviously, I want to see what those guys got. Even even from a special teams perspective, right? Throw some new guys in there. Throw some guys that are on the practice squad. See what you got, right? Like at this point, like if you lose to the Bears, you have nothing to lose after that. The season is over for you. You're not going to make the playoffs at that point, even if you do run the table. That's the one thing I am excited about is like the guys that are going to step up. Isaac Guerrero is someone that I was really high on coming into the season as well. I thought he could have been the number 2 back behind McCaffrey, but obviously Jordan Mason has played, tremendously this season and should have been used a lot more even when McCaffrey had come back. But that's one guy that, I'm really excited to see. Obviously Dominic Pooney, I think the world of Dominic Pooney, he's been a revelation, on the offensive line, like him being paired up with, better offensive linemen around him, the sky is the limit for him. I feel like, even yesterday, like Jalen Moore and Ben Barch, they actually did a pretty decent job in run blocking. Like they were opening up holes, against the Bills, second line of defense. So, maybe that's something that you look at, like maybe just roll with the starting offensive line. Like Purdy was pretty well protected yesterday. It wasn't like he was scrambling for his life or anything. He just wasn't making the right plays because guys couldn't get open. So there's a lot to still be optimistic about because you want to be able to build for the future. You don't want to just lose, 5 straight games and tank for a pick, right? That's not growth. Growth is developing from within. And this is something that the Niners haven't had to do because the last couple of years we've had the luxury of being so healthy with our star players. Now it's going to be a real testament to not just the coaching staff, but to the players that they brought in to see what these guys actually got and if they can actually contribute to the NFL level. Fred Warner said it himself. He's like, there's 11 guys on offense and 11 guys on defense, and they're all in the NFL for a reason. So now they have to go out and show the reason why they're in the NFL. And that's going to, take everybody, not just the players, but the coaching, the performance staff. Every single person has to be on the same page to actually be able to perform. It's all 3 phases of the game. There's going to be so many different changes that come about if they lose this Bears game. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said. At this point, it's like you just want to see the guys go out there and compete every single Sunday, right? Yes, even though these losses are piling up, just come out there, play hard, compete, play with some fire, play with some passion, right? This next 2 games are at home, right? I think against for the Niners. So you got your home crowd. You're going to have fans out there still, regardless of what the record is, regardless of who's out there. So go out there and play hard for the fans. They want to see you get a win. And in that process, like you said, develop the young talent, right? You have a lot of guys that are going to be the new core of this team. That's what it is now, right? Especially when you look at that, the defensive side. And I mentioned the secondary. That's a really, really young secondary that we have. But it's guys that we can finally feel like we're confident in, like a really strong group, right? So let these guys go out there, make plays, and see what you got. And then that's going to help them in the offseason address the needs that they have, whether it's through the draft or free agency, right? The more they play these guys right now, they'll know what they have and what they don't have. So play your young guys, go out there, compete. And, for Purdy, I want to see him finish the season on a high note. Hopefully he gets that confidence back. He's able to have a game where maybe he throws for 250 yards and 2-3 touchdowns with no interceptions, right? Have a clean game, go out there and get a win. And if they can all it takes is one win, right? If they can come out and get this win against the Bears, obviously anytime you win a game, you're feeling good. You start to build a little bit of momentum. And, they rattle off one, maybe you rattle off a second against the Rams, and then you start to think, okay, maybe there's like a slight glimmer of hope there. And they'll need some luck too, right? They'll need the Seahawks to lose some games. They'll need the Cardinals to lose some games. And, the Cardinals, they have a pretty relatively easy schedule remaining. I mean, they play the Seahawks, the Patriots, the Panthers, the Rams, and the Niners. So they definitely have some winnable games there. Seahawks do have a tough remaining schedule. That's a good thing for the 49ers. They got to play the Cardinals, the Packers, Vikings, Bears, and Rams. So they got 3 NFC North opponents, all 3 solid teams, in addition to 2 division games. So we'll need some luck on the Niners side. And then the Rams play the Bills, the Niners, the Jets, the Cards, and the Seahawks. So there's a lot of division games left in the NFC West.
Yeah.
And it's gonna come down to the last week of the season. Week 18 is probably when we're gonna see a division winner. So as much as we've talked about everything's been shit this season, Niners somehow still have a chance to come out and win the NFC West and make the playoffs. It would be crazy to see it happen. And if it does come to that point, man, that pod we do the week after, if they were to clinch, is going to be insane. But hey, you never know, right? With the NFL, things could turn around. Like I said, I wouldn't put my money on it, but you never know. So we'll see what happens. As I mentioned, on Sunday, the Niners playing the Chicago Bears, who come to Levi's. Caleb Williams, #1 overall pick, coming to the Bay for the first time. And then after that, the Niners will have a short turnaround against the Rams, also at Levi's in a Thursday night game. So let's see if the Niners can get some guys back, hopefully this upcoming week. As we mentioned, McCaffrey likely out for the season now, going on the IR. Jordan Mason going on the IR with a high ankle sprain. So they'll be without their top 2 running backs. It's Isaac Guerendo season for the rest of the year. So get your waiver wire in, get your fab money on Isaac Guerendo for all the fantasy players out there. And we'll see if the Niners can come out here and get a win on Sunday. Thank you guys, everyone, for tuning in. This is the deep dive. Please subscribe. Thank you for commenting. For Amma and I'm Sandeep. We will be here next week and hopefully recapping a Niners win. And if not, you're going to see more sadness on this show.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Everyone have a good night, and we'll catch you guys next week.